Nations are not only lost on battlefields. Some countries are dying in silence, day by day, year by year, until one morning they wake up and realize their people, their culture, and their very identity are gone forever. Across Europe and Asia, some entire nations are collapsing from within. Schools are shutting down because there are no children left. Hospitals are overcrowded with the elderly because there are no young people to replace them. Economies are shrinking, cities are aging, and foreign communities, especially Muslims immigrants, are slowly taking over the empty spaces that natives once filled. This is the death of a country. It doesn't happen in a single night. It happens slowly, quietly, but permanently. So in today's video, we are going to show you 10 countries that are going to die forever in 2025 and 2026. But before starting the video, I want to request you, we put our best efforts to create our every single video. So please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Let's start. Number 10, Japan. You must have heard a lot about Japan's technology, but you might not have heard about what I am going to tell you now. Japan, once known as the most disciplined and hardworking nation in Asia, is today the fastest disappearing country on Earth. The Japanese population peaked around 128 million in 2010. But now, only a little more than a decade later, that number has already dropped to about 123 million. Experts project that by 2050, Japan's population will plummet below 100 million, a catastrophic loss of nearly 1/3 of its people in a single generation. The primary driver is an ultra-low birth rate of just 1.2 children per woman, far below the 2.1 needed for population stability. Entire towns are aging into oblivion, with schools shuttering as classrooms sit empty, lacking children to teach. In rural regions, centenarians now outnumber school-age children, a chilling sign of demographic collapse. Japan's resistance to immigration, rooted in preserving its cultural homogeneity, has triggered a cascading crisis. With a dwindling workforce, factories are closing, businesses struggle to find staff, and the once robust economy is contracting rapidly. The average age in Japan is now over 49, among the highest globally, and by 2100, projections warn of a near-empty nation of retirees facing an inevitable end. The labor force has already shrunk by over 1 million workers since 2020, with forecasts predicting a 52% employment drop by 2100, crippling GDP growth and ballooning social security costs to unmanageable levels. Abandoned villages, or ghost towns, are spreading, with vacant homes outnumbering residents, while a critical shortage of 500,000 caregivers by 2030 threatens to unravel the healthcare system. Amid this native decline, Japan's Muslim population is surging, growing from 110,000 in 2010 to over 350,000 by 2025. A 218% increase in just 15 years, driven by immigration, intermarriages, and conversions. Mosques have multiplied from 15 in 1999 to 113 by 2021, with growth outpacing the national birth rate by tenfold, raising fears that Japan's ancient traditions, from Shinto rituals to samurai heritage, could be eclipsed by a rapidly rising foreign influence. Now, does Japan need changes in its rules and policies? Please give your opinion in the comment below. Number 9, Italy. Once the cradle of Rome, Venice, Florence, and the Renaissance, is now collapsing in silence. In 2024, the country recorded fewer than 400,000 births, the lowest in its history, while deaths surpassed births by over 300,000. Each year, Italy loses the population equivalent of a small city due to this relentless decline. The fertility rate has plummeted to 1.2 children per woman, far below the 2.1 needed to sustain a population, mirroring Japan's crisis. Small towns are hollowing out, with schools closing, hospitals critically understaffed, and entire villages abandoned as ghost towns. Italy is aging rapidly. 1 in 4 people in some provinces is over 65, creating a nation of pensioners with no future. Economically, the impact is catastrophic. With fewer young Italians to work and pay taxes, the economy is contracting, with GDP growth projected to stagnate at under 0.5% annually by 2030. The labor force is expected to shrink by 10 million workers by 2050, crippling industries and social services. Italy has turned to immigration, but this has shifted the cultural balance in cities like Rome, Milan, and Naples. In 2024, over 15% of newborns had foreign parents, with native Italians increasingly opting out of parenthood. Meanwhile, Italy's Muslim population is the fastest-growing demographic, rising from 1.6 million in 2010 to over 2.8 million by 2025. A 75% surge in 15 years, driven by immigration and higher birth rates among Muslim families. Mosques have increased from 351 in 2009 to over 1,200 by 2023, with Islam projected to account for 10% of the population by 2040, threatening to overshadow Italy's Catholic heritage. Within decades, native Italians risk becoming a minority in their own land, as the Italy of ancient Rome and the Renaissance fades into history, replaced by a fragmented, unrecognizable nation. However, in the last few months, it has been making some changes in the policies for its native population, and many rules and regulations are also being imposed to control the immigrants. Now it remains to be seen whether this country will be able to save its original culture or not. Number 8. Greece. Greece, the birthplace of Western civilization, democracy, and philosophy, is now dying from within. Its population has been in free fall for years, shrinking by over 720,000 people, 8.5% of its total, between 2008 and 2025. The fertility rate languishes at 1.3 children per woman, far below the 2.1 needed for replacement, while deaths outpace births annually, accelerating the decline. Since the 2008 financial crisis, over 500,000 young Greeks have fled abroad, primarily to Germany and the UK, in a devastating brain drain that has gutted the workforce and left villages desolate, populated only by the elderly with no successors. In rural Greece, the education system is collapsing, with 766 schools, over 5% of the nation's total, slated for closure in the 2025 to 2026 academic year due to insufficient student numbers, many with fewer than 15 pupils. In some regions, teachers manage just a handful of students, and children face grueling commutes of up to 80 kilometers to reach the nearest school. Churches, once the heart of Greek orthodoxy, are shuddering as villages lose their youth, leaving sacred traditions to wither. Economically, Greece remains crippled from its debt crisis, with GDP growth projected to stagnate below 0.5% by 2030, as the worker-to-pensioner ratio plummets to an unsustainable 1.7 to 1. The elderly now make up 23% of the population, outnumbering children by nearly 1 million, threatening the collapse of the pension and healthcare systems. Meanwhile, immigration is reshaping Greece's demographic landscape. Islands like Lesbos and cities like Athens are undergoing a profound cultural shift, with the Muslim population surging as the fastest-growing group. From 500,000 in 2010, the Muslim population has grown to an estimated 1 million by 2025, a 100% increase, driven by immigration from the Middle East and North Africa, higher birth rates, and asylum policies. Mosques have proliferated, with over 300 now operating nationwide, compared to just 100 in 2000. By 2040, Muslims could constitute 12% of Greece's population, outpacing the declining native birth rate tenfold. This rapid transformation fuels fears that the Hellenic identity, rooted in ancient philosophy and Orthodox Christianity, will be erased, leaving Greece a fading relic of its glorious past, overtaken by foreign communities as its economy and culture unravel. Number 7. Germany. Germany, Europe's economic powerhouse, is teetering on the edge of a demographic abyss. Its fertility rate, languishing at 1.5 children per woman in 2025, remains well below the 2.1 needed for population stability. By 2060, projections warn that Germany's population could plummet by up to 20 million, from 83.6 million in 2024 to as low as 63 million, meaning nearly 1 in 4 Germans alive today will vanish without replacement. The workforce is aging at an alarming rate, with the median age now at 45.5 years, among the highest globally. Industries face a critical shortage of 1.57 million unfilled jobs, with sectors like healthcare and manufacturing on the brink of collapse due to a lack of skilled workers. To address this, Germany has leaned heavily on immigration, with net migration of 400,000 to 440,000 in 2024, largely from Turkey, Syria, and African nations. In cities like Berlin, Cologne, and Hamburg, entire districts are now dominated by immigrant communities, with over 30% of residents in some urban areas having a migrant background. Schools are transforming rapidly. Since 2015, over 1,200 primary schools have closed due to declining native enrollment, while in urban centers like Frankfurt, 60% of schoolchildren now come from immigrant families, reshaping the cultural fabric of education. While native Germans increasingly opt for one child or none, immigrant families, particularly Muslim ones, have higher birth rates. Germany's Muslim population has surged from 4.1 million in 2010 to an estimated 6.2 million by 2025, a 51% increase, driven by immigration and a fertility rate nearly double that of native Germans. Mosques have proliferated, with over 2,600 now operating nationwide, up from 1,000 in 2000, signaling a rapid cultural shift. By 2040, Muslims could comprise 10 to 12% of the population, outpacing the native birth rate by a wide margin. The social system is buckling under the weight of an aging population, with 31% expected to be over 65 by 2060, leaving a worker-to-pensioner ratio of just 1.5 to 1, threatening to bankrupt the pension and healthcare systems. Without a dramatic reversal, Germany's economic miracle and cultural heritage face extinction, as the nation risks becoming unrecognizable within decades. Number 6. Spain. Spain is another European country heading for extinction. The fertility rate here has collapsed to just 1.2. In many parts of the country, the number of deaths already doubles the number of births. This means the Spanish population is shrinking every year, and villages across the nation are becoming ghost towns. In rural Spain, mayors are begging couples to move in and have children, offering free housing and subsidies. Yet even with these measures, young Spaniards are uninterested in starting families. High unemployment, economic struggles, and a cultural shift toward individualism have made raising children less attractive. Meanwhile, Spain has turned to immigration to fill the void. Cities like Barcelona and Madrid are experiencing a demographic transformation. In Catalonia, the number of immigrant births already surpasses native Spanish births. The traditional Catholic culture of Spain is being replaced by a new mix of communities with different traditions and higher birth rates. Economically, Spain is in crisis. An aging society, fewer workers, and a growing pension burden are pushing the country toward financial collapse. If the trends continue, Spain will not only lose its identity but also its ability to function as a modern economy. Number 5. Portugal. Once a proud empire that ruled the seas, is now shrinking into silence. The fertility rate has collapsed to just 1.4 children per woman, far below the 2.1 needed to sustain its people. Entire villages across the countryside are empty, houses boarded up, schools closed forever, and farmlands abandoned. The young have fled to richer European nations, chasing work in Germany, France, and Switzerland, leaving behind only the elderly. More than 1 in 4 Portuguese citizens will soon be over 65, making Portugal one of the oldest nations in the world. The economy struggles with debt, declining productivity, and a workforce that shrinks every single year. Since 2010, over 1,200 primary schools have closed due to plummeting student numbers, with some rural areas reporting classes with fewer than 5 children, signaling a near-total collapse of community vitality. By 2080, Portugal's population is projected to plummet from 10.6 million to 8.2 million, with the aging ratio doubling to 300 elderly for every 100 young, threatening to bankrupt the pension system and erase centuries-old traditions. Meanwhile, the Muslim population is surging, growing from 20,000 in 2000 to an estimated 85,000 by 2025, a 325% increase, driven by immigration from North Africa and South Asia, outpacing the native birth rate and raising fears that Portugal's Catholic heritage and cultural identity will vanish into a fragmented, unrecognizable future. And while immigrants are slowly filling the void, the Portuguese identity itself is fading. Portugal is not just losing people, it's losing its very soul. Number 4. South Korea. South Korea is living through a demographic nightmare that even experts call irreversible. With a fertility rate of 0.72 in 2023, the lowest in the world, South Korea is on track to lose half of its population, plummeting from 51 million to around 25 million by 2100. Young Koreans are refusing marriage and children, crushed under the weight of high costs, grueling work hours, and a hopeless housing market where sole apartments cost 15 times the average annual income. Ghost villages already dot rural Korea, where over 1,200 primary schools have closed since 2015 due to zero student enrollments, with 49 more schools slated for closure in 2025 alone. Even the military, the shield of a nation surrounded by threats, faces collapse as conscription pools shrink by 40% by 2040, jeopardizing national security. Despite government spending of over $200 billion on pronatal policies since 2006, the trend has only worsened. The Muslim population, meanwhile, is the fastest-growing demographic, surging from 40,000 in 2000 to an estimated 200,000 by 2025, a 400% increase, driven by immigration and higher birth rates, raising fears that Korea's Confucian and Buddhist heritage could be overshadowed by a rapidly shifting cultural landscape. By 2070, with a median age projected to hit 56, South Korea will become a nation of the elderly, with a worker-to-pensioner ratio of 1.5 to 1, collapsing pension and healthcare systems and leaving no future generations to inherit the land. Number 3. France. France presents a different kind of decline. Its native French population is shrinking rapidly, with the fertility rate dropping to 1.59 children per woman in 2024, the lowest in over a century, far below the 2.1 needed for replacement. Rural towns in Normandy, Brittany, and central France are dying, schools shuttered, main streets silent, entire neighborhoods vanishing. Over 1,500 primary schools have closed since 2010 due to plummeting student numbers, with rural areas like Cruz reporting 20 WER children in a decade, leaving ghost villages where the elderly outnumber the young by 3 to 1. Meanwhile, immigration has surged to fill the gaps, with net migration of 152,000 in 2024 alone, primarily from North Africa and the Middle East. Large cities like Paris, Marseille, and Lyon have transformed in a single generation, with over 25% of urban residents now of foreign origin, and native French culture being overshadowed by new arrivals. The Muslim population, the fastest-growing demographic, has soared from 4.7 million in 2010 to an estimated 6.8 million by 2025, a 45% increase, driven by higher fertility rates and immigration, with mosques rising from 2,200 in 2010 to over 2,800 today. The tension is visible everywhere, between the old France struggling to hold on and the new France rising in its place. Economically, France is weighed down by a public debt of 112% of GDP, unemployment hovering at 7.4%, and a pension system buckling under a worker-to-pensioner ratio projected to fall to 1.5 to 1 by 2050, risking systemic collapse. If the trend continues, the France of history books, its language, cuisine, and Catholic heritage, may only survive in memory, replaced by a fractured nation unrecognizable to its past. Number 2. United Kingdom. The United Kingdom, once an empire on which the sun never set, is now a country in demographic freefall. The fertility rate has collapsed to 1.5, and more than 20% of the population is already over 65. Rural schools are closing, villages are vanishing, and Scotland and Wales face a future where entire regions could depopulate within decades. London, the capital, has already passed a historic tipping point. Native-born Britons are no longer the majority in the city. Entire generations of the traditional British family are disappearing, replaced by immigrant populations that now drive the economy and culture. The NHS is collapsing under the weight of an aging population, while young Britons themselves are leaving in search of better opportunities abroad. Britain is not just shrinking, it is being transformed into something unrecognizable from the empire it once was. And the current situation of London is not hidden from anyone. Number 1. Bulgaria. At the top of this terrifying list stands Bulgaria, the fastest declining nation in the entire world. Since 1990, Bulgaria has lost over 2.2 million people, a staggering 27.5% of its population, dropping from 8.98 million to 6.71 million by 2025. Every year, more Bulgarians die than are born, with 58,222 births against 104,011 deaths in 2023. While the youth continue to flee westward in search of work, with net migration draining 4,800 people annually. The fertility rate has collapsed to just 1.3, one of the lowest in Europe, far below the 2.1 needed to sustain a population. Entire villages stand empty, with churches locked, over 1,800 schools closed since 1990 due to plummeting student numbers, and homes reclaimed by nature as rural areas report a 40% population drop in 2 decades. The workforce has nearly vanished, with a labor shortage of 200,000 workers projected by 2030, leaving the economy hollow and fragile, with GDP growth stagnating at 1.1%. Experts warn that if current trends continue, Bulgaria's population could shrink by another 1/3 by 2050, to just 4.5 million, with a worker-to-pensioner ratio of 1.5 to 1, collapsing pension and healthcare systems. Meanwhile, the Muslim population is the fastest-growing demographic, surging from 577,000 in 2011 to an estimated 750,000 by 2025. A 30% increase, driven by higher birth rates and immigration from the Middle East, with mosques rising from 1,200 in 2010 to over 1,500 today, fueling fears that Bulgaria's Orthodox Christian heritage will be overshadowed by a rapidly shifting cultural landscape. That would mean the death of a nation. Not through war, not through disaster, but simply through silence. A country vanishing in plain sight. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.